In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the wheel bearing on your Jeep Grand Cherokee located behind your front wheels. Using your 19mm socket, loosen and remove the lug nuts. Once you have the lug nuts removed, grab the wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Now at this point here, we went ahead and we turned our key to the on position. That's going to allow us to go ahead and turn our steering system one way or the other. Now this is a little bit tight right now. What I'm going to do is go to the passenger side wheel, and we want to access the bolts on the back side of the caliper and the caliper bracket. So grab that passenger side wheel, give that a good old twist, and that's going to give us access to those back bolts. To remove our caliper here, there are two 17mm bolts, one on the top, one on the bottom. Let's loosen and remove those. I'm going to use our pry bar here, grab that caliper and slide this out. We're going to work this out of the caliper bracket. At this point, we're going to grab our hanging hook here because we want to go ahead and remove this, and we're going to hang it off of our coil spring over here, up and out of the way. Now in doing so, you want to be careful not to damage the brake line. Go ahead and remove your brake pads. Now I'm not going to pry on the pad itself. I'm just going to go on the outer edge. Slide those out and set those aside. We want to remove our caliper bracket next. Now there are two 18mm bolts holding this here. Now when we remove these two bolts and the caliper bracket comes off, the rotor will be free floating. Be careful not to let this fall or drop on your foot or anything like that. We're going to use an 18mm socket and our breaker bar. Now with the front wheel off, you're going to come around to the front side of the knuckle here, and here is your ABS speed sensor wire, and here's the sensor itself going into the back side of the knuckle. Now we're going to use a 5/16 deep socket in our 1/4-inch ratchet. We want to go ahead and loosen the bolt here. Now we did spray it down with some rust penetrant and let that soak for a little bit. Let's go ahead and spin out and remove that bolt. Might get to a point where you can reach in there and just spin that out the rest of the way by hand, or just continue to use your ratchet until you can get that bolt out. There's the bolt. Next, we're going to remove our rotor. Sometimes there's a little bit of rust holding that in place. Just give it a few bonks and go ahead and set that aside. Now at this point here, I want to go ahead and remove the three 12.13mm socket to go ahead and loosen and remove the hub bolts. There's one up top here, one on the bottom. You can see our socket and ratchet already. There's one on the front side. I'm going to go ahead and loosen these. Now we're not going to remove the bolt completely yet. I want to pay attention to right here. You can actually see the stud itself. You want to leave some of those threads in there but I like to leave about a 1/2 inch of space between the stud and the knuckle itself. Let's go ahead and remove this, and we're going to go ahead and break the top one free and do the same thing. Now we happen to switch over to a 1/2 inch drive. It's a little bit easier to get these bolts out. That's good right about there. With these two loose and pulled out, we're going to go ahead and grab that passenger wheel, rotate the whole knuckle the opposite way, and that's going to give us access to the front bolt a little bit easier. Now previously we removed the bolt from our ABS sensor. We just kind of tucked that in there. Just pull that out and set that aside. With those 3 bolts loose, we're going to straighten out the wheel. And we want to now go ahead and loosen our axle nut. We have a cotter pin on the front section here. We're going to use a pair of cutting pliers. And ours has 2 little legs on the cotter pin. You might have just 1 on there. But what you want to do is straighten them out. You can go to the other side and you grab the eyelet or the loop and pinch and rock it, and what that's going to do is pull that out. Now sometimes they break. Cotter pins are a one-time use, so you want to make sure that you have a replacement one ready to go. Do not reuse a cotter pin. It is a safety issue. So now that we have the cotter pin out, dispose of that. In the center, we have our little castle nut right there. We have this little washer right here. Remember that came off facing inward like that, not outward, so inward. Using a 36mm impact socket, we're going to loosen and remove our axle nut. Spin that off. And right behind it is going to be a washer. You can use a pocket screwdriver or something like that to go ahead and work that out. And it's just a large flat washer. Doesn't matter how it comes off either side. Set that aside. With the axle nut removed, next thing you want to do is make sure that your axle is free or not rusted into the hub. For some reason, if it's stuck, you can go ahead and grab a mallet, give it a few bonks inward. That's what you want to see. You want to see that free movement here. If yours is stuck, spray it down with some rust penetrant, let it soak for a little bit, and you want to make sure that it is free floating like that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our hammer and we're going to work this hub away from the knuckle itself. We just kind of like tap on the hub face on the back side here and work this out. Once this comes out to the point where these bolts are bottomed out, then we'll remove the bolts and continue to tap around here until the hub separates from the knuckle. Definitely wear safety glasses or eye protection when doing this job. Now at this point, our hub is separated from the knuckle. We can now use our ratchet to go ahead and remove those bolts the rest of the way. There's bolt number 2, and then get to our top center one here. You may have to turn the wheel a little bit to get to this. Now be careful when removing the last bolt. The hub will be free. They are heavy. You don't want to drop this on your foot. Slide the axle out of the center like so, and set your hub aside. Before we install our wheel hub, we're going to apply some anti-seize lube to the face here and a little bit on the splines. And take your wheel hub, slide it over the spindle for the axle shaft. Work that into place. Let's go ahead and install our bolts through the back side. Go ahead and install our bolts. Now we did put some anti-seize compound on the threads of our bolts here. I'm just going to go ahead and get these started, a few threads. Get the other side started here. Now once we get all three of these started by hand, we're going to come back with our ratchet and we're going to go ahead and snug those down. I'm just going to bottom those out. I'm not going to tighten them yet. Now let's go ahead and torque down our bolts to 75 foot-pounds. Install the washer. Go ahead and install the nut. Let's go ahead and snug that down. So now go ahead and torque down this nut to 175 foot-pounds. We're going to install 2 lug nuts all the way down as far as they can go. What we're going to do is rotate our axle here. And we're going to use this as leverage so we can go ahead and torque down our axle nut. Install the spring washer here and go ahead and install this here. You want to make sure when installing this castle locking nut right here that with the notch that needs to line up with the hole in the axle itself. That way there you can install a new cotter pin. Feed that in. Use your pliers or cutters. We're going to bend this up and around. Use some needle nose pliers. You can go ahead and fold those right around nice and tight. Remove the lug nuts. Take the sensor, feed that in. And take the bolt and put that in, and we'll get that started a few threads. Once you have that started, go ahead and run that down. Once it bottoms out, you just want to snug it into place. It doesn't have to be super tight. It bottomed out right there. Maybe quarter turn. Install the brake rotor. And we're going to spin one lug nut on. And this is going to hold this to the face of the wheel hub. I'm going to line our bracket up here. I'm going to put some anti-seize compound on the threads of the bolt. Go ahead and line up that bracket, get it started a few threads. Once you have that one started, go ahead and repeat for the other bolts. Once you have these started, let's go ahead and snug those down. Go ahead and snug these down using your 18mm socket. Go ahead and torque down your caliper bolts to 70 foot-pounds. Install the brake pads. Put these tabs into the sliders there. Repeat for the inboard pad. I'm going to remove our caliper from our support here. I'm going to bring this over. Now with the tool removed, we can go ahead and line this up. Bring your slider pins over, push those in, slide this over and into place. You can see that our slider pins here, they're flat on two sides and has rounded edges on the other. We want the flat edge up against our caliper. If it's over the other way, it won't line up to get that bolt in. So if you spin that around, it'll allow that caliper to move in further and get that bolt started immediately. We do the same on the bottom. Let's go ahead and snug those down. Torque down the upper bolt to 25 foot-pounds. Do the same for the lower. Remove the securing lug nut here. Take your wheel, bring it up, set it into place. And we're going to start all of our lug nuts by hand first. Once we have all the lug nuts on, let's go ahead and snug them down. Torque the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.